the rare and appropriate Maller monologue on the puck. Now, Boston was the stage for the Four Nations Championship game. I watched. I said I was going to watch, and when I say I'm going to do something, my word is my bond, and I watched. So, USA team, Canada, not an Olympic event. It's just picked out of Gary Bettman's Tookus and the Four Nation thing, because nobody wants to watch All-Star games anymore. So I don't know if you watched it or not, maybe not, but the game went into bonus time, where Connor McDavid, who couldn't get it done last year in the Cup final for Edmonton, but Connor McDavid got it done here. He scored with 8:18 on the clock at overtime there, and Canada gets a 3-2 win over the U.S. there on Thursday night in Boston and the North American rivalry. We need Mexico to get a hockey team so they can be a third team in here. But this really just a tune-up for the 2026 Olympics, although the hype for this thing was next level. Tickets on the secondary market were Stanley Cup final level pricing. And you had Nathan McKinnon of the Avs, Sam Bennett, they scored for Canada, and it was Jordan Binnington. Yes, the St. Louis Blue, the 25 saves in regulation, and then in overtime he had 6 more, and that is where the same arena where he, as a rookie 5 years ago, he was able to get it done in the Stanley Cup final against the Bruins. Must be something about the home team losing in that building in hockey. And for Team USA, Brady Tkachuk and Jake Sanderson, they had goals. And a guy with a great name, Connor Hellebuck, 22 saves in regulation. He had 3 more in overtime, but it was all about the game winner from Connor McDavid. He said of the Four Nations matchup, he said, you can't ask for a better show than that. Okay, that's what he said. So let us discuss. Were you entertained? Yes. Did the USA versus Canada game live up to the billing, as Connor McDavid said? You can't ask for a better show than that. So I've got my thoughts on this. I've got Panda Express, synchronized swimming, and old-fashioned breakfast dish. And we will combine all of these things together, and I'm going to take you on a joyride on my Zamboni is what I'm going to do. Absolutely. Right there. All right. So, first of all, it was a mixed bag, right? Did it live up to the billing? Well, we got overtime. That's a good thing. Check that box right there. The game was nip and tuck. Yes, that's a good thing. Nail biter. All of those things are positive things. Didn't have a great feeling when the Canadians scored first. Uh-oh. What, whoa. But USA came back and tied it and all that. It was 1-1, 2-2, and then eventually, obviously, what happened in the overtime. But when you do the evaluation, and you check the full picture here, the game, the outcome of the game, you cannot look at the game without the outcome because that's what you're going to remember, right? And so it was kind of like a meal at Panda Express. It was sweet and sour chicken because ultimately, years from now, you're not going to remember, it was a close game and, overtime and this guy scored, that guy scored. No, you're going to remember the bittersweet ending. If you're in America, now if you're in Canada, it's a different story here. That they were the U.S. team, in overtime, they were all over Binnington, and he ended up making the plays, and that's what all these games are about, right? You make the plays when you have to, blah 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 blah, as the cliche goes, right? All that matters is what you do in the moment, and he was just a hair better in the moment, and so I thought, Mr. Hockey over here, that the USA was dominating, putting pressure on the Canadians, but then they took a nap, and you can't take a nap at that time, and the Canadians stood on guard for thee. And so for Connor McDavid, storybook ending, not so much for Team USA. And if you felt there was a huge Arctic gust of wind, did you feel the Arctic gust of wind? It was around the 11 o'clock hour there in the Eastern time zone, and that was a gust of wind coming out from Canada towards America, and it was a sigh of relief. It was a sigh of relief, collective sigh of relief from the outcome of that game. Now, moving on from that, you had A former NFL player entered the chat on this. You had J.J. Watt, who said in the lead up to the game on Thursday night that the Four Nations face-off is the, quote, definition of growing the game. And he's not alone. I've heard many a pundit, many a so-called expert forecast tremendous boom times for hockey because of what happened over the last week and a few days. So will this actually lead to more NHL fans? Now, I have no skin in the game. I have no puck on the ice. But I'm going to downvote this popular opinion. Unpopular opinion by me, but I'm going to go downvote on the idea that this is growing the game of hockey and there's so many more people that are going to watch the NHL because of this. And here's why. Now, the USA lost, so that's a big part of it. But even if they had won, even if the outcome had been different, my position would not be that much different because and I'll preface this by saying credit to the players. It is possible. It is possible that you can treat an exhibition like it matters. I was told by my favorite NBA stars that you can't expect them to play hard because they might get hurt. They might get hurt. So you should just accept the fact that they're lackadaisical, lazy, and they lollygag. That's the NBA model in exhibition games, but clearly it's possible. It's conceivable that in hockey, with nothing really on, let's be honest, there's nothing on line. They just made up the trophy out of thin air. But hockey players playing with gumption and grit and all that stuff, and that's wonderful. And as for the view from 30,000 feet, as I said, even if the USA had won, any uptick would have been temporary. Here's why. The reason that you got engaged and the reason I got engaged, and I became a little invested here at the end, is not because of love of hockey. All right, not because you love icing the puck. All right, not because of that, but because of love of country. It was patriotism. And with any of these events, you can always sell patriotism. People always buy it 100% of the time, right? And I'm no different. You wrap yourself in the flag. But it's similar to people watching synchronized swimming or rhythmic gymnastics during the Olympics. You kind of get into it because you want to see a medal, right? You want to see your country win. But are people watching rhythmic gymnastics or synchronized swimming when they're not wearing the colors of your country? No, there's no carryover. And so do you think, even if there's, let's say 5% of the people that watched this tournament, they flip on this weekend, I don't know, some Blues Avalanche game or the Wild and the Blackhawks or whatever game it might be. I don't even know the schedule, but whatever game. You think they're going to be like, oh, man, this is great. This is just like what I just saw here. No, there's going to be no juice. There's no aura around a random regular season game in the NHL. So it's not really about like, well, I love hockey all of a sudden. It's like, well, yeah, you introduce people to some hockey, but it's more about the country stuff. That's what it's about. Now, speaking of that, the last word immediately following the Canadian win in overtime, the outbound prime minister, will this guy ever leave? Justin Trudeau, tempted to poke the president, President Trump, with some internet trash talk, some sporty internet trash talk, saying, you can't take our country and you can't take our game. He sent out on social media, or someone who's an underling sent that out on social media. Of course, that's referring to the 51st state chatter, and many Canadians say, well, you're the 11th province now. But what did you make of the Canadian trash talk from Justin Trudeau? So my position on this did not quite hit the bullseye. If you look at the menu, the Trudeau attempt at trash talk was an old-fashioned breakfast dish. It was milk toast, and it was covered in weak sauce. Kind of like his ability to govern the fine people of Canada there. His line, you can't take our game. Now, I'm casual comes when it comes to hockey, but even I know that it's kind of already happened. Like the U.S. kind of took your game. I mean, let's be honest here. And I'm not going to even bring up the fact that the U.S. team beat Canada in the game on Saturday, a couple days back. But last time a Canadian team hoisted up Lord Stanley's Cup was when the internet was in the embryonic stage. The World Wide Web, as it was called, in 1993. This is before America Online. This is before Netscape Navigator. Way before social media was a thing. People were trying to explain to everyone what this was. The information superhighway, they called it. And all of that. We're talking about 32 years ago. 32-year drought for... Again, as Trudeau said, you can't take our game. But for 32 years, teams representing U.S. cities have won the Stanley Cup. And if I'm not mistaken, I did some MALLER math on this. There's 32 teams in the NHL, and there are 25 teams in the States. So that means around 80%. I think the actual sweet spot number is 78% of the NHL is U.S. teams, but you can't take our game. Well, it's kind of happened. It's kind of happened there. So, I mean, you can take it back if you want, but it's kind of taking place there. All right, your thoughts. Did you even bother watching this? Were you doing something else? There's some bad NBA games on. I was locked in on the hockey.